So we were going to get together today. We've got a lot of, by we, I mean, you have been gathering and tracking a whole lot of like analyst sort of survey things and analysis, I guess you would say. That's what an analyst
Sure,
does, right? About
sure,
how because of the pandemic, the COVID stuff, whatever, how their priorities have changed around. And
hmm
I think I was just noticing. I think did Gartner have their big event recently? They must have.
Yeah, symposium just
What
happened.
is that a does that work in a virtual world to go to a symposium? What feedback have you heard, if any?
Apparently, people are digging it, and it's super popular.
Yeah. Oh.
I have not checked it out. I will admit, but I mean, the IT symposium shows are huge. I've been to one in Florida and one in Barcelona,
Ah,
and
yes.
they're huge. They're the flagship event. They're the CIO event, largest gathering of global CIOs, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they're pretty impressive. Lots of senior IT exec, CIO level content, right? So you're not going to get into the nitty gritty of the tech, but there was a lot of a couple of years ago was a lot of stuff that that we've talked about, right? Modernization, culture, continuous innovation, etc. All those things.
Yeah.
Testing, like why it's important to be okay to let people fail, all these things. And I was like, oh, I feel like I'm at a company town hall, my company's town hall.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, and it
The
is.
messages.
I've only been to a few like of those events, and even fewer like seeing the analysts present. And it's a
Mhm.
different. Even if you consume like whether you're on the free side of the paywall and you just look at blogs or quotes and stuff, or you read the PDFs, like it is a different medium and therefore experience of kind of consuming their analysis to see stuff presented.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, one of the sounds that I miss is you're one of those big conference halls, especially a keynote thing, and it's all
hmm
dark and black, and it's always
hmm
nice and crispy cool because it's always very
hmm
air conditioned, and there's always that sound in the background of the big industrial air conditioners just
hmm
kind of making that humming noise, and I haven't
Yeah.
heard that noise in a while.
Yeah.
But just to round out Kote's
Yeah.
noise memory history, like every now and then it's very rare in Europe to hear a leaf blower, but every now and then the city comes through and they just blow all the leaves away. It's great because leaves accumulate. And like,
Right.
I'll hear this leaf blower, or every now and then you even hear a lawnmower, which is another thing you don't hear in Amsterdam very much. And like, immediately I'm transported back to like Texas summers, where like,
Yeah.
you hear leaf blowers and lawnmowers. It's really weird to have that experience here. Well, anyways, as I was saying,
Yep.
you've collected together a lot of kind of before and after, like what CIO priorities are for sort of IT and other spending before
hmm
the huge COVID thing changed the way that businesses were doing. And then there's we even have like one interesting survey of like, or Forrester has one of how priorities changed, and that seemed like a good topic to go over, right?
Yeah.
What are people
Yeah.
saying they're interested in? So let's jump into it.
All right. Let's do it.
What's like your favorite thing in your big pile of stuff that you've come across? And then we can talk about what the pile of stuff is.
Okay. My favorite thing was that of the top 3 to 5 priorities, right? This is in the Forrester. So let me actually explain. So we did what's called a recontact study
Uh-huh.
with Forrester. So earlier this year, VMware commissioned Forrester to do a study of CIOs and plus one or something, I think is the term, right? So CIOs, senior IT, VPs, senior IT executives, asking about their modernization priorities and plans. And so we decided to do hey, this is like in June, I think. What's changed, right? Because they did this like end of last year. So what's changed? Like
Right,
this has
right,
got to be
right.
something that's changed. So they recontact those folks. So we got at the original one, they got just over 600 respondents. In this recontact, they got just over 200.
Right.
And what was interesting is that cost reductions definitely moved up, but so did new business models, supporting new business models,
Yeah.
which I think is fascinating because I think that's true of whether you are a small retail shop, in your little cute downtown, or a huge bank or a huge retailer or a restaurant. So I found that interesting. And it's something, and the reason I found it interesting is that it's been true for so long, right? Except we were saying, don't get Ubered, don't get Airbnb'd. You have to be able to figure out new business models and quickly, or you're going to get Ubered. And we got COVIDed, if you will. Is that even a word? So here we are thinking like, oh, you don't want somebody else to come in with a new business model and take your revenue. It's like, oh yeah, you know what if this pandemic happens and you have to figure out a new business model, or you're not going to make it.
So what's like the, like when you talk with analysts about this and or the actual types of people who are surveyed, like what is their urgency is the wrong word, but what's the difference of, I'll use a silly phrase, the innovation gap? Like, so like you were saying previously, it's sort of like the what would you call it? The the first main slide in your EBC presentation is going to be like, all companies are software companies and you've got a digital transformation and like, so it's all about software now and blah, 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 all that stuff. So you got that. And like, that's been going on. I forget when that Andreessen piece came out, but that's been going on for a good 10 years or so. And everyone's like, yep, sounds good. We got to be more innovative, right? But, you kind of sort of identify like, here we are now. And here's the gap towards that aspiration of being a software company. And do you get the sense that like it's the same and there's just more urgency around it, or it's deeper, or it's more shallow? I don't know. I'm always trying to sort out with this stuff, like, so now you're actually going to start flossing daily.
Yeah. Versus... I mean, right. You know what? Honestly, it's going to be, I think they talk about this in the study, but I think it boils down to customer experience. And by customer, I don't mean just your customers who buy things from you, but include employees in there.
Yeah.
Right. So at that very high level, like as an organization, right. As an IT person, right. As somebody who needs to, it's enabling the people who are building these user experiences or user behavior, like, making your business model in line with new user behavior. So customer experience. So those developers or those that are doing those to be able to respond quickly. And also now your employees are all over in this case, employees are everywhere. And guess what? And we've talked about this. They have a different level of expectation of what it's like to work for you now, because they grew up in this age of phones and mobile, mobile work, all this stuff, right? They have different expectations as well, right? So I think it's that. I think it's same but deeper, to your point.
Right. Maybe there's more urgency. Well, urgency is the wrong word. Well, go ahead.
I was going to give you an example, right? So I said earlier about how like you have to change your model regardless of whether you're a small boutique retail shop or a large sporting goods company, right? I heard an interview on the radio with this woman who owns a small boutique, and what she did was she changed her model to a subscription model for her loyal customers, right? Since they couldn't come to the store anymore, so doing more curated subscription things. So hey, you'll get a box of every month you're going to get a box of really fun new candles or whatever, right? Based on your taste, or, baby clothing, right? As your kid, I have a friend who owns a children's clothing store. I'm like, you should totally curate, how old your clients' kids are. Everyone's going to take this idea and run with it, right? Someone's going to build a business and you send them every 3 months, and you have a baby, right? Like how fast did they outgrow stuff, send them new outfits, based on their age and size. So rather than like, now you can't have a brick and mortar retail shop, what do you do?
Right.
Send the stuff to them.
Yeah. I guess. Yeah. That's kind of the point.
So that's what I mean by new business model, thinking differently. And you know what? You need software for that, right? Like.
Right. Yeah. You have an entirely different, well, not entirely different. The way that you transact business with customers changes. Right. Yeah. And like, so what that implies is that you need new tools in order to tool around that, right? Like whether it's whether it's like the example this comes up frequently is like people who like companies that were like had already been working on like curbside pickup and omni-channel stuff,
Yep.
were like all set for it. Whereas other
Yep.
ones were like, oh, we should start that digital transformation initiative
Exactly.
we keep talking about every year.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about Fiserv. Here's another example, completely different market, right? Huge company, financial services. And, we can share links to their talks from Spring One. They had to build an app to process billions of dollars of the PPP loans, right? The small business loans that came out after the pandemic. And they built that app to process all those loans in 2 weeks. They couldn't have done that unless they had a platform and or tools or the right processes in place to do this. I know it sounds cliched, repetitive, and we've seen this before. Yeah, you have. And it works. Yeah. And so had they, right? So here's the thing. So it's the same thing. So
let's we tested that you can show us these things in our crazy Twitch world.
Gosh.
But I mean, if you think it's a good shift, let's walk through the actual I don't know what people are saying. I think that's the funnest part. And
so let's do.
I'm always fascinated to see how people interpret charts. So I'm looking forward to seeing you being someone new being the chart reader.
Oh my gosh. And I want everybody to know we have not talked about this yet. Like, this is kind of like going in blind. So
it'll be great.
Have fun. This might be entertaining, or you might be like,
yeah,
what's this crazy lady babbling on about?
It's going to be wonderful.
Now. All right.
Let me see.
You're confident.
Yeah, of course.
There. Phew. There.
Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. I'm gonna switch over to that. Boom. Transition to it. Okay.
Oh, good. So no one had to see me get to there.
Now, just let me. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to resize what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. And this is just the raw data. I think again, you can send a link or put in a link for the little interpretation spotlight. If you
totally.
Will. This is us interpreting real time. Right, you and I are going to interpret this real time.
Yeah, this is like what a meeting is always like. You come up. We haven't done any pre-wiring. This is the dangerous kind of corporate meeting.
We might get in trouble.
We're just going in cold. You haven't tried to see the priorities that I'm interested in, so that I will give you the vote of confidence. And I also don't know what priorities you have, so we're just looking over this for the first time. But I think it's going to be good. All right.
So there we go. All right. So, this is just tells you who they talk to. People who make decisions and have money. So, they ask, describe the lead time for deploying your stuff, right? Weeks.
And here, right? I'm guessing, well, I don't know. Sometimes people are really pedantic about lead time, but it's basically like lead times or deployment. And once you're done with the coding, how long does it take you to get it up and running in production?
Yep, which is good. I mean, considering it used to be months.
Yeah. And
so
that's before everything.
This is
or I mean the previous one, the lead time was before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was just the level setting. So
yep.
This is whenever we'll have this. COVID-19. And then there's more charts down here where that show last before and after, I think. So, all right. So here we are. Remote work. We talked about this, right? You have to be ready to set up for that. So many places were not set up for that. Schools were set up for that, as we know. Revenue loss huge. Digital demands to me, is same as I think how we interpreted that in the spotlight is, new business models and stuff.
Right.
Meet new digital demands. That's new customer demand. So oops, sorry, there we go. And that was right. Business priorities. So this is what I thought was really cool. This is my favorite of all the things, right? It went from 41 to 58. Reducing costs went up a bunch too, right? It went up from number 4, which makes sense because you're not getting as much revenue, and then growing revenue also went up, which makes sense.
Yeah. So what do people make of the, when you talk with people, what do they make of the, how do you make friendly bedfellows, so to speak, of reducing costs and innovation?
Yeah.
That seems always an issue.
Yes. We talked about this too, right? Earlier, at least I brought it up. I'm like, this is going to seem weird, but the fact is you got to use what you got. And we actually talk about it, even not really specifically about this, but later on. And one of the things that came out of this is use this time to reskill your existing, right? Because it's expensive to hire new people. Now, and if you can, try and use free training. I'm going to put a plug in here for Kube Academy, for example, right? And Kube Academy Pro, which are VMware training, free training things. So in that regard, right, there's the training. You can, I don't know if you reduce costs, but you don't have to hire a bunch of new people. Reskill the talent that you already have.
Yeah.
Right. And we all know you can use, and this goes into here too later, we all know you can use automation. When, again, in the spotlight, we call that out, right? Is using automation to reduce operating costs, if you will, to the operational stuff, to fund innovation. That's kind of like the big headline, right? Which I probably should have started with that in the beginning. Sorry, again, it's early. I've been up for early. So I think one of the big headlines from this study was, use automation to reduce costs for infrastructure and the like, and then use the money that you save there to fund innovation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, and I think that's always what I'm curious about. You is essentially the way that you allow for innovation in most companies is to remove as much waste as possible.
Yeah.
But then the big leap I think that people sometimes don't make is like, we've removed all this waste and then we're not going to take those savings and spend it on making more money. Instead, we're just like, that's just, bottom line that we have, and we don't, as they say, reinvest. And I think that's also like, I don't know if I really thought about this closely together, but I'm always interested in like, what's the difference between the so-called tech companies and every other company? And usually the so-called tech companies have almost limitless money, right? Like relative to other things. And so it's sort of like, it's easier for them to be innovative because they have lots of money. And versus other companies, they're in a different situation as far as getting access to money. So how do they need to operate differently? And it would suggest, that they need to be really focused on waste removal, to use a lean phrase for it.
Operational efficiency.
That's right. But then as you're saying, right? Like, but then you actually have to do something with that spare capacity, and not just be like, I don't know, distribute the cash.
I saved this much. Hey man, you know what? Like, we could probably, what's the story about the prodigal son, right? Where the father gives his son the monies, and one saves it and the other one uses it to live. It's kind of like that, right?
Sure. It's So that makes it, so it's sort of like, and maybe that's what's interesting about like a crisis like this is, you have to do both at the same time, right? Like you have to save money, but you also need to, like, it's immediately apparent that if you don't change the way you're operating, things will be very difficult.
Yeah. And I would imagine, incremental innovation, right? I don't know, like incremental and continuous innovation.
Yeah.
The other thing I will say is, I shared with you earlier this morning a blog post by the other analyst firm, by Gartner, about board of directors basically investing more in digital transformation.
Oh yes, let me move that over here to the screen share. Let's see if it works.
Yeah, the average budgetary changes in 2020, right? And tech increased. This is like 200 and almost 300 people are respondents, right? Almost 7% said they're going to increase IT. Now we're looking at this, and we're doing a sad piano for these folks, right?
Oh, sad piano. Yeah, at the bottom, right? The SG&A people.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't bad. The product development, new products, and research and development. So this is your wheelhouse, right? You worked in this kind of stuff, didn't you? The mergers and acquisitions stuff.
Yeah.
But look, this is board of directors. This is coming from the board of directors.
But it does show you where the priorities for stuff are, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why this chart is a good mirroring up of it. Is it shows you. I mean, these are single digit percentages, but at large organization, a single digit percentage is a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
So it's fine. But it shows you how. I mean, I don't know.
And to our point, I think what we were saying is like, where are you how can you save money and fund innovation at the same time?
Yes, exactly.
Right. And so how do you not just, and it comes down to a couple of different things. As mentioned earlier, building as many, particularly for IT, as many operational efficiencies as possible, which often means more innovation. And then there's the kind of bigger, corporate, which is, finance, marketing, like the stuff on the bottom. That's where you can further reduce money.
Yeah.
Reduce spending.
Yeah.
Because I know when we were talking, I was like, this seems like it kind of is opposed to what we're saying, but I don't think these two things are mutually exclusive.
Yeah. Well, you're doing basically just like, you're shifting from just run the business in its steady state to change the business, basically.
Right. Oh yeah, that's right. Run, change, grow.
Oh yeah, there you go. Just so it is because the two areas that you see of negative spending, and again, I mean it is single digit percentages, so you don't want to get too worked up about it. But basically, finance, obviously, marketing is all about innovation. As two people who work in marketing is critical for innovation. You don't want to reduce there, but you have finance, marketing, human resources, selling, general, and administrative, right? And those are largely about just running the business, not trying crazy new things. So it would be that would where you would cut back on things.
And the thing that we're not looking at here is what they say is that like more than half, almost 70% of the board of directors said they're going to increase spending in technology because I think they recognize they have to, right? Is it you got to spend money to save money? I don't know. I don't know in this case. So because you might have to invest a little bit more in automation, like I said, or innovation to realize larger changes. So.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. All right. So Dazzle.
I'm just heartened, right? I'm just heartened that the business folks recognize this.
Yeah. No. I think that's the other thing. Like I remember on this topic, I'll go back to just our two heads. Yeah, okay. I fixed it. If people were watching this, they were seeing all sorts of windows move around. But now I think I can switch between two heads and two small heads sharing a screen. I think I might. I'll see if I got it solved. But I remember talking with a couple of our customers, right? And the story that they told, and I think at Spring One Platform, Jana Werner told this in her presentation, was essentially. Like we were forced to really accelerate the way we were doing things in a new way. Like we had no other choice. And I think there's two interesting takeaways from that. And I wonder if this shows up in the survey stuff. One, we were surprised is the wrong word, but like I think in aggregate, kind of like the takeaway from a lot of people is like we were surprised that we could actually do it. Right? Like in the sense of it had been taking us a long time to get to this point, but like push came to shove and we were like, all right, let's actually do it. Right. And I think that's heartening in the sense of like, well, you've proven to yourself that you can do it, so you can keep doing it. And then the second thing that I hadn't really even thought of is just like when I talk with people about, they're starting to get concerned of like, is this a sustainable pace? Like we're all like, this is a lot of work that we're doing and a lot of change, and so like as things go back to normal, how do we make sure that we keep up this new way of operating instead of going back to the old way of doing it, which is always a question, right? Like when a weird state change comes in, people will do all sorts of work, but like, how do they find the good parts of the change instead of going back to the old way of doing things?
Yep. Yeah. Let's see. I mean, I'll have to agree with you on that one. And I like like we were saying earlier, like, oh, we did it. We were surprised that we could do it. But, if you have it in place and you've been, you've sort of practiced, if you will, when you didn't have this pandemic kind of breathing down your neck, it works out.
Yeah. All right. So What are some more exciting charts? Let's go through it.
Oh, gosh. All right, let me share screen again. Let's see, the ones they have ones with stars. Resistance to change, right, was hindering application improvement. That can this some that shows the original study and then the recontact.
Ah, yes.
Okay. Uh, sad, we're talking. This kind of went down with this,
Yeah.
where it was this, but and this went up. The stakeholders.
Oh,
And
they've
the
drawn
easy things
lines.
first.
I like it when lines get drawn on charts. That's very good. Okay. Okay.
So that these went up quite a bit, right? From most important to business stakeholders to lowest cost to improve, went up, and then this went down a little bit, which it seems weird to me, considering that customer experience, the way customers are behaving changes a lot in a pandemic. So that's one thing I'll say.
So most important. Well, this suggests there is a certain type of analysis that I think we try to do with people, which is you do a quadrant thing, and it's you figure out the most technologically viable thing to do, the easiest thing to change technologically, but that also has a large business impact. Right? Whereas if you focused on things that have a large business impact that are technologically very hard to change, that's going to be complicated. So you want to find that good mix of ease of change versus business facing. So maybe that's a little bit of what that's going over there, right? That's a good way to start.
This was another one, right? Which of the application improvement challenges hinder you from improving your software applications?
Oh.
Right.
So what's going on with this one?
This was an interesting one to me. Too many different development environments or tools was up there. I think this was just a new. I think this was a new. This was actually from the original resource study. So this was interesting to me, right? So I think this is where we come in with the automation angle.
Yeah. So
and then the lack of skills.
Okay, I like that.
Okay, let me see. Let me poke around a little bit. We did this one. We did this one that does the. Oh yeah, here's another one. This is. Did you see? This is another one where that compares the two different. Two studies.
And they're color coded, right? The top one goes all the way down to the bottom. Huh.
So, reducing infrastructure costs and IT operations costs. This is, I think, where we come in and talk about automation, right? This is where automation helps you to do this.
Yes.
Was I think the because we worked with one of the analysts there on interpreting some of this stuff, and so what we kind of came to was the recommendation is automate this stuff as much as possible to reduce the infrastructure cost, right? Use public cloud as you can, and there's compliance in there is good. Is always an issue. So those things, some they moved up, not a whole bunch, but a little bit.
And then so basically what this points towards is, let's see. I mean, as you were saying, those priorities really do shift around a lot. How do you look at a lot of these charts? How do you read the difference between let's see, a 48% and a 35%? Is that significant? As far as the usefulness of that data? I'm always curious. I mean, that's almost 10 percentage points. That's a lot. But let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. The difference between a 38% and a 35%.
Yeah, that to me is not a big increase, honestly.
Yeah.
I would say. So that was another thing is there weren't any huge, there was a couple that jumped up, right? We were looking at priorities earlier. Those were a lot of shifts. And there were a lot of shifts here as well, but there was nothing jaw dropping. And frankly, I'm going to, how will I put this? When it comes to business, this is my experience. I think at the beginning of all this, there was a lot more, I want to say extreme, but a lot more, I don't know, even hysteria, that's too much, but people were a little freaked out, right? And I think there was okay, I'll give myself an example. Okay, we're going to stop doing this, this, and this. I'm going to stop spending on all these things. And as it turns out, I didn't need to. Things are still humming along. And I think part of it is if you can, particularly if we think about business, in the outside world, like if you can figure out how to, survive and thrive, if you were able to shift your business model or your IT strategy to meet, what should be tied, your business priorities and your IT priorities should be closely tied. If you can move quickly together, the impact of the pandemic shouldn't have been as harsh as we thought it would be.
Right.
Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm saying that. Yeah.
No, exactly. I mean, I think that's the conclusion of a lot of like this type of line of thought is that you need, you need agility to change things around.
And I think a lot of people at the beginning were like, "Oh my God, that's it. I'm gonna be asked to reduce my budget." People were hunkering down and were like, "Oh my God, I expect to have my budget cut by a whole bunch, or I'm gonna expect to be told that I can't spend on this, that, and the other thing." And in some cases, that didn't happen. I'm not saying it did. It didn't happen. I mean, for everybody, but like I think in some cases, you might have been like, what, we have to. Okay, so we're not doing a live event, right? So we would take all that money, we're going to put it into a online event, and you might have spent just as much and had a really great online event. That's another example of taking money that you would have spent on just innovation, right? That's another, I think, innovation example. It's like all of a sudden there's all these online events, right?
Right.
So all the money you would have spent on in-person events, you're doing now on online events.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, knowing that we're going to talk.
I'm going to stop share for a second.
I was thinking about that knowing we were going to talk about analyst stuff. And, putting on big conferences, I mean, I think it costs like millions of dollars. And so you have to charge a lot. And it was making me wonder, like, I wonder if like by having events online, you actually end up saving a lot of money, right? Like, because you can look at events as like generating a lot of revenue for you, but then they also like cost a lot of money. So like you sort of like have the chance to not have to be spending all that cash as well. But I guess that's another interesting little thought exercise.
One of the questions we asked was about staffing.
Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of people either have, when this first happened, hiring freeze. I feel like in March, April, we're like, stop all hiring processes. And then I've seen an uptick in hiring since then. Yeah. But I think in the beginning there was a hiring freeze. So people are like, okay, I have all these things. I need to, all these new roles. What do I do? And that's where we talk about, training to help fill in the gaps in staffing.
Oh, yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I think all of this like gets back to like, and man, I don't know a way to like put it in a non-cynical way, but it's like, oh, we should finally start all this work, right? Like we finally have a drive to a reason to actually change the way that we're doing things, and I think it also not to make that it's not to characterize that it's all like blame on the organizations that need to change, but it's also like, well, maybe this whole conversation we've been having that people have this imperative to change could be a little overblown as well. or it could be that we just weren't explaining it well enough. I don't know. It is a curious phenomena, right? That like, it's probably just like human nature that if it's oftentimes, once you have a heart attack, you eat healthier, right? Like once you're sort of hit with a crisis, you start to behave differently. Yep. Back to the flossing.
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things that we got out of that one, and I'll share. So we were talking about hiring freezes, right? So a lot of people implemented hiring freezes early on. So one of the things that became apparent was that if you have the right culture in place and the right tools, you can make the people that you already have more efficient. And also back to the, reskilling. Yeah. So that's one of the things that we came to with this result. So in the end, right, this was the headline of this thing, right? Automation, take the money you save from automation, spend it on innovation. And if you have any left over for reskilling, but there's also tons of free kind of training that you can use, or even, maybe even internal mentor programs, or, even our own company has a lot of these like, hey, take a rotation, kind of thing. This is the time to do it. So these were the three things that we got out of the.
And what is the abandoning projects one? What does that mean?
Let's see.
So it's basically
yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, this was interesting. Yeah. Basically, if they didn't see any business benefit to something, right, it's cutting the waste, right? Like they didn't see an exact business benefit. This is where it becomes important, right? We always talk about this. Make sure IT and business objectives are aligned, right?
Yeah.
For IT to remain relevant, it needs to support business objectives, and it needs to support the business. So, and I think there was one. That's right. You remember that weird one that we were looking at where what's the most important to business stakeholders moved up?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's where that was.
Yeah. I was reading that totally wrong. I was thinking like these are things that don't work. Like just abandoning a project like has a negative effect. But no, of course that makes sense. Yeah. And then you can't see it, but on figure 4, what people can see is that it says like the most important thing is like what stakeholders want when we're prioritizing our projects. Right.
Yep.
But we're rehashing something we already said. But like this figure 4 on page 7 of that PDF at the bottom, if you want to refer to it yourself, but I'll walk through it. Like, I think this chart is it's a great example of how to think about
there it is. Okay.
what your priorities and motivations should be when it comes to deciding what to do next and what to drive your strategy, right? And not only does it show you like what people are interested in, but these are probably general things that people worry about all the time, right? Like how closely should we listen to helping the business out? Like, how should we worry about moving to cloud stuff? Should we control costs or not? And on and on and on, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it is like it's a good summary of that. And you were showing us this earlier, right? Like it would also be, in the future, it would be interesting to constantly ask these questions and monitor how they change over time, because it's almost like, I don't know, just to throw out a theory. If the moment of time that we're in right now is like a big crisis moment where people are scrambling to do things, you would almost expect that when everything was cool and placid, that this chart would flip upside down, right? Like that you would move to sort of like, the lowest thing on here is taking care of ongoing maintenance costs. So cost cutting on stuff that isn't changing. And when everything is cool and you don't need to change, that's probably what your top priority is. Right, just to kind of like cut costs, but that's it. I'm going to use that list.
Yeah, and then I would say I would add to that is like what impacts the business most, right? Don't just move it to the cloud right? Or don't just change it for the sake of changing it. It has to have impact on the business stakeholders, right? That's number one. And then if that's the case, then it's like, okay, so what's your most important thing? It's, supporting the business. So if this, then what, right? Then like, okay, will this help you do that? Will this help you do that? Will this help you do that?
Yeah.
That should be the first point.
Yeah.
Decision point. Anyway.
That's a good, so maybe to close out as the last thing, maybe we should come back and talk about this, but I would be curious next time to hear about like in the conversations you're in, like what people say about what that means to pay attention to business stakeholders. Or to use the old phrase, what is the old business IT alignment thing, right? Like that seems like a topic that analysts are always talking about. And it'd be interesting to hear like examples of what that looks like. And the reason I'm thinking of this is oftentimes, and I'm sure this comes up with you all the time, is like the question is like, what's the point of all this container stuff or the point of all this Tanzu stuff? And we're always like, the point is to be able to like do software better. And they're like, yes, but what does that mean, do software better? And you're like, to write software so that it runs your business in a better way and you can innovate the business, which seems sort of like obvious to those of us who are doing that, but it's, my sense in that we talk about that all the time is because it's still like an exotic notion to people. And so,
right.
Yeah.
But I think, honestly, I feel like COVID or this pandemic kind of brings it home, brings the
Yeah.
example home, and that like, okay, what we mean is this. What we mean is Dick's Sporting Goods was able to get their curbside pickup operation done in 2 days.
Yeah.
Why? Because they already know they've gotten really good at building software. They've gotten really good to build software that supports their business needs.
Yeah.
Or Fiserv is another one, right? How is Fiserv able to build an app in 2 weeks that processes literally billions of dollars of loans?
Yeah.
You couldn't
Yeah.
do that in
Yeah.
2 weeks before. Oh, it's because they already had that platform in place. And they already had the teams set up to work with each other in a way that was like continuous, if you will. And I think they did that. Something like there was like a continuous, like they worked nonstop on this thing. Right.
Yeah.
So, and how
Yeah.
did they do that? You can't just like all of a sudden say, okay, you guys are stuck with each other for teens of hours a day, like unless they have that process down and all that, and they got their 2 pizzas. No, I'm kidding. That's not going to happen. So I feel like this really demonstrated like, hey, this is what happens when you have your transformation poop together.
Yeah. No. I.
If you have your acts together, right?
Yeah. I like a lot.
So
of
what we were saying earlier about your friend, right? Like that you were talking to, same thing. She's like, "Wow, we did it! Like we're amazed that we were able to do it." Yeah, you did it because you had already all those things in place.
No, that's definitely the case. But no, I like what you're saying there because I'm trying to generalize it into the world of rhetoric. Maybe one of the beneficial things of everything we've been talking about is that like there's all of this whether it's people like us or organizations that are changing the way they do software, analysts, everyone's always espousing this better way to do software and innovate, right? It sounds great. Yeah. But like maybe for a lot of organizations it's one of those like, well, that's nice for you, but it doesn't really matter for me. Or not only does it not matter, but it's like almost so difficult that I'm not really going to take it seriously. But then you have some sort of leveling thing where everyone is affected by the same urgency.
Exactly.
And then they realize like, oh, okay, well, I guess I should see if I can do this. And it turns out I can do it. So like all this trepidation I had about it is was conquerable.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Everybody is now like, boom. Everybody's got to act fast now.
Yeah. And just to close it out, because back in 2015 when I just started at Pivotal, way back then, we would have the slide that had the logo of Airbnb, Tesla, and all these other people. Yeah. And the whole point was like, it was like the version of FUD where you're trying to agitate your customers that they should be worried. And the thing would be like, many times they would be like, oh, well, we're in banking, so we're immune. Right. And so like, there would be just this walk down. Everyone would come up why they're immune to that sort of thing, and so they don't need to worry about it. Versus,
correct,
they would come up with excuses, not like I do when it comes to being healthier. They'd come up with excuses of why not to change.
You said it, it's like it's not a matter of like now you're worried about getting Ubered. You're worried about a global pandemic messing up your business.
Right. Yeah.
Everybody. I mean, add healthcare to that mix too, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, that's
taken a huge shift.
Yeah. Now anyway. we have a webinar coming up going over this stuff or something.
Yeah. Well, so November 10th, we're talking about this, and we will have the lead analyst on the project, Dave Bartoletti, there. So if you have questions, want to poke around on these things, please invite folks to join and be part of the conversation and ask us questions or share your experiences. I always love hearing other people's stories. So.
And then this paper that we've been looking at, do we have that up now available?
Yes, it's also on the Tanzu website.
All right, well, perfect.
I don't know where you share, how you can share the links.
Oh, yeah. Well, at the moment, I'm putting all the show notes for these episodes at kote.io/Tanzu Talk, where you can also see the archives for things. And awesome. I'll see if I remember to do this, but in the YouTube replay, you can put little cards in that you can click on to see things. And so I could put that in there as well.
The other thing I want to add is later in November, we're going to be doing a joint webinar with somebody from McKinsey, a fellow named Tomas, who wrote an article about tech transformation anti-patterns. And, between McKinsey and VMware, we've done talked to thousands of companies and done thousands of engagements on digital transformation. So kind of learned a few things. So we'll be talking about that on November 19th. Information for that is not up yet, but when it is, hopefully I could share it here as well.
That'll
But
be
that's,
fun.
if you really want to talk about the transformation thing and, what works, what doesn't, why, all that stuff. So
we should either
fun.
have that person on, or you and I can plan after the webinar. We'll do some reaction videos to it. We'll like sit here and we'll do little Mystery Science 3000 stuff for it. That would
awesome.
be fun. All right. Well, great.
All right.
Well, like I said, if you want to get the show notes, you can go to kote.io/Tanzu Talk. And with that, we'll see everyone next time.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me. Bye.